the Commissioner, you support the College of Policing guidelines on this then, that basically these incidents, even though they're not crimes, should be recorded as hate incidents. You support that?
We follow the College of Policing guidelines.
Right, so that those hate incidents basically then can be seen by advanced checks, even though they're not crimes. They can be seen by advanced checks for people maybe going for certain types of jobs. They will come up. Even though there's no crime involved, that's fine by you.
They'll occur if a particular type of security check is taken, yes. They'll be available to be disclosed.
Do you know very much about the case of Harry Miller that I think you referred to at the beginning there in the High Court? You know about the case?
I know about the case. I'm not an expert in it.
Right, okay. Well, you know that because of various tweets he liked, as it were, he was called by a policeman who said that he had come to check his thinking. Check his thinking. What is your view on that?
That's a matter, I mean, the circumstances of that particular case are a matter of the Humberside Police, of course. I can't comment on whether the officer did the right thing or not. I wasn't part of that decision-making process. My point is,
all right, but I mean, you're a very senior policeman.
Yes,
right?
and I'm giving you my
This
opinion.
just happens to be a case where Harry Miller had the perseverance, or whatever, to go to the High Court. Yeah. We have no idea how this is, how many times this might be happening. He was told that he was had to check his thinking, right? And basically, he came back and said this is sort of Orwellian. And basically, when it actually came down to the case, which was about him, I think he liked some sort of limerick about a trans woman, something like this. Essentially, the policeman then went into all sorts of strange details about why he'd come, and then said, I've been on a course about it. So your policemen are going on courses about this sort of thing, right? The end result is that this man was taken to a very, very, a level of depression because of what was happening, because someone felt that they could check his thinking.
All right, welcome again. Today we have a video to go through, and as you can see by the little intro here, it might be about command responsibility under the Hague Conventions and within the laws of armed conflict or international law. Now, as we've pointed out through this role of administration, they are obligated to certain things that you may not be aware of, being brain trained into the glass ceiling of academia that our little cretin Bill Shorten's gone off to join, because where does the money come from and go? Might go into those academia, might go into that glass ceiling to stop you from rising above it and seeing what is what on the table. So we look right now at a video. I'm going to change to a microphone. We're going to go through some law. We're going to go through what is spoken about in this video, which is quite long. So this is going to take probably an hour, like the other videos. And then we'll discuss post-fact this video, because this defines command, responsibility, and the linking of certain organizations together for an action in which people just followed their orders, at which, on the flip side, mandates were defined to be unlawful within the Supreme Court of Queensland. So post-fact we have some actions, pre-fact we have this video and the way that these command acted in relation to pushing an agenda out over the top of the people.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm joined today by Commissioner Fuller from New South Wales Police and Brigadier Garraway from the Australian Defence Force to announce the increase in capabilities from the Australian Defence Force as part of the nationwide Operation COVID Assist by the Australian Defence Force. What we will see from today are 300 ADF personnel assisting with police to ensure there is maximum compliance when it comes to the current public health orders.
So we obviously start with a line of command. They gave me the power, not my precious. They gave me the power. And we get this described line of authority, name for name, which leads us into a few things. Firstly, we can see the laid out command here from New South Wales, the Honourable David Elliott, Minister for the Police and Emergency Services, with that fancy little St Edward's crown there, denoting some sort of authority. This command then refers to an expansion of military support into civilian practices, aka the police. So now we've turned our defence forces into policy enforcers, enforcing the policy of an internal government system wherein the Senator, the Honourable Linda Reynolds, CSC, is the head party here to this agreement led by Major General Paul Kelly, DSC, DSM, to coordinate the operation of 7 state and territory-based task groups. The ADF is contributing to a national response. So we have a chain of command here going into the Parliament, with the Minister for Defence enacting through the Parliament some sort of legislation that led to the combining of the police and the military. Now, we can further see here that in an interview with 2GB's Ben Fordham, that the Prime Minister did state that what he had done was put Brigadier Galloway as the head of the task group that is deploying all ADF support in flood assistance, which is then expanded out to this COVID-19 response. Now, many of the failures here at an administrative level then get scrutinised like a corporation would scrutinise its internal processes, and a response inquiry demands that several improvements to that corporate atmosphere take place without any responsibility of command for those failures, which may actually be criminal offences. What we can further see, as with Albo and the treason pointed out there, is that the same came out of Prime Minister and Cabinet, which has behind it the Federal Executive Council. We can see that the Prime Minister and Cabinet is a corporatised sort of block for some stakeholders or shareholders, wherein the people have lost a right to what was an indissoluble federal commonwealth constituted under the blessing of Almighty God, now corporatised into the world of usury with a corporate plan for the Commonwealth that is unfolding before your eyes in a forced industrial revolution that is backed by the finances pushing around the likes of Anthony Albanese and Scott Morrison.
This is not something the government wants to do. It's something that the community needs to happen to ensure that we reduce the spread of COVID-19 and get our lives back.
So this is a form of gaslighting and is actually at law torture. We don't want to take away your rights. The rights of the community need to be taken away to reduce something we've yet to prove, to get those rights back, to get those rights back. It's a form of gaslighting that says if you don't submit to losing your rights, you won't get them back after they are taken. From a state point of view, this is inflicting mental pain or suffering upon more than one person, a population, an entire state of New South Wales, and as admitted in other states too. So this inhumane treatment of inflicting physical and mental pain and suffering upon the state and its residents is considered to be an international war crime. You cannot intimidate a population mentally into submission. And that is what we are witnessing before our very eyes. We cannot negate here either in that his believed command comes from a lineage of command responsibility that we've sort of demonstrates goes straight into the Prime Minister and Cabinet and the Federal Executive Council.
I'm delighted that we're going to be able to be seeing the support from the Australian Defence Force in a whole range of roles that have been occurring in other states around the country.
Just to reiterate, I'm not the only one just following orders.
There is nothing new in this. There is no need for anybody to be concerned. This is a normal defence aid to the civil power protocol. These protocols have been around for decades. We've seen them used currently in other states. We've seen them used with the operations down at the border closures in Albury. We've seen them used during the bushfire season of 2019-20.
So we get this reassurance. It's just nothing new in all of this. The Army have come and locked you down in your homes before. We're going to lie through our teeth about former performance versus the performance we're carrying out now. Everything's normal, everyone. Stay under your spell. We've seen the federal government impact the states before, even though that's not in the limitations of the Constitution. Everything's normal here. Stay under your spell. Now, the closing down of borders goes against the Constitution Act at Clause 8, which defines these colonial boundaries to have been repealed and therefore not in existence due to the fact that the Commonwealth, above its constitution, had declared boundaries between international partners.
There is no need for anybody to be concerned. This is still a civilian police-led operation, and of course, the police-led operation is responding to the rules set out by the democratically elected government. There is no need for anybody to carry on as if this is some sort of move away from the government's response to COVID-19.
Now, while we didn't get everything right, I believe we got more right than wrong. And without dwelling on every decision we got wrong, I believe it's important to point out one mistake which was made by governments here and around the world, and that was the strict enforcement of vaccine mandates.
This is self-explanatory, coming in post-fact to make an excuse as to why all this is happening in the very first place, while a line of command escapes the responsibility for its actions in the first place. We've already covered a plethora of criminal offences surrounding these actions and demonstrate this very clearly when a line of authority in those orders that were followed is now standing up and saying it made a mistake when it actually committed a criminal offence.
We're just very, very lucky that we have 300 Australian Defence Force personnel who are in Sydney that are able to assist us. Brigadier Garraway will talk about the deployment, but there certainly will be a mixture of reservists as well as regular ADF personnel. They will be working right across Sydney. No one suburb will be targeted. There will be ADF personnel deployed alongside police right across the city. The personnel, the ADF, will also be working in supportive roles to ensure that meals are delivered.
So did anybody get their meal? I mean, this is the police minister telling us that the police and the ADF are going to deliver meals while they lock us down in our homes, which was a mistake.
To ensure that the police are supported in areas where they can then redeploy their assets to ensure compliances across the city are maintained and met.
This is where one has to remember that no legislation was in place. This was complying with the health directive coming out of the health ministers for the states, like Brett Sutton in Victoria. These people are also in cahoots with the decision that came out of the Prime Minister and Cabinet to enact certain things on behalf of a line of authority, i.e. some sort of command responsibility for all of these mistakes. Now, what I'd like to point out is that the reservists and the ADF are already operating on these international laws of armed conflict. This is very evident by the Brereton report and the findings over the 30-plus soldier deaths in Afghanistan. When this is put on the table over things that relate to the Australian Defence Force, you can't negate from the fact that they are operating under those rules against Australians on Australian soil.
It is going to be a 6-week operation at this stage. I'm very, very hopeful that we can bring that forward. I'd be delighted if we could shorten that 6-week deployment. But of course, because we're very lucky to have such a agile Australian Defence Force and they work so well with the New South Wales Police, if that does need to be extended, unfortunately, there will be an ability for us to do that. At the moment, it's just those 300 ADF personnel. They'll be working alongside 17,000 police right across New South Wales, but obviously based in metropolitan Sydney. And we are, again, very delighted that this can occur. But these are established working protocols. There is nothing unusual about this operation. And of course, if it's going to mean that we can get our lives back and we can shred those public health orders and ease the city of its restrictions, well then I think the community will agree with it. I'll now hand over to Commissioner Fuller and then we'll hear from Brigadier Garraway.
This attempted justification in front of the camera while gaslighting the actual people, the residents of New South Wales. They can't escape the fact that post-fact, a Queensland Supreme Court deemed what they did to be unlawful, and the Premier of New South Wales, as shown here again, says he's sorry for breaking those laws.
Now, while we didn't get everything right, I believe we got more right than wrong. And without dwelling on every decision we got wrong, I believe it's important to point out one mistake which was made by governments here and around the world, and that was the strict enforcement of vaccine mandates.
This is a direct admission of guilt on the floor of the New South Wales Parliament, being treated as if it was a corporate mistake.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Minister, and thanks, Mike Garraway, Brigadier, of the Australian Defence Force, for joining us. Mike and I have been working together for nearly 2 years now, and that partnership started when the bushfire season started all the way back in 2019, and neither of us thought we would be here today. But nevertheless, COVID continues to provide many challenges, and the Delta variant probably has been the greatest challenge for us.
So, in case you didn't pick up on that, all you Lismore residents that saw the failed response from the military that took 3 or 4 weeks to arrive, New South Wales deemed all of its services to be a failure and shut them all down, and then reinvented this new system that involved the Australian military. And that's why the police commissioner's talking about having worked with them for 2 years since the failure of the Lismore floods and the distinct failure of the military to provide services to Australians, while it was willingly providing services in places like Afghanistan and obviously today the Ukraine, Israel, and the amount of money pouring out of the country as opposed to the support for a flood, and now this mandated lockdown-y type stuff.
Last Thursday, I made the request through to the Prime Minister, through the New South Wales Premier, for defence assistance. It's actually an expansion of the current defence request. We have Australian Defence Force currently working in the Police Operations Centre doing logistics and planning, and of course in the hotel quarantine operation. We've seen them in place since April last year, and those who have worked or come into the city would have seen defence on and around our hotel system in the CBD. Now, why the request last Thursday?
This convoluted story of command. I made the decision, yet I'm already working with them, and they're embedded in my command centre and have been through several exercises already where I might be following command, yet being told that I'm the one taking command and will now use the health minister as my excuse for that command, even though the military are already embedded in my command.
With the COVID numbers being around 200, if you think about 200 positive cases, then the work health do with contact tracing, that could be 1,000 doors we need to knock just on today's statistics alone. Now, what to prevent Defence provide and have provided for the last 2 years, highly trained, motivated workforce who understand logistics, they understand planning, but they also understand that sense of community. So to have them back assisting us over the coming weeks is a great outcome for New South Wales Police Force.
See, the people no longer trust us. We've been smashing their car windows and dragging people out of their homes for Facebook comments. So we thought that if they saw a soldier, they might feel a little bit more okay with the trampling of their rights, which is defined by this 1,000 out of the entire population that could now be monitored on some sort of AI-driven computer system that forms some sort of corporate logistics model.
Numbers are pretty sweet.
Are they? You know, I hadn't even noticed. And how is Georgie doing?
He's doing great. I love working with that big guy.
Keep the doors coming, Charlie. I'm on a roll today.
George and I are like brothers. 2319! We have a 2319!
George Sanderson, please remain motionless. Prepare for decontamination.
Duck and cover, people!
Oh, not the CDA.
Coming through, please. Inside. Clear the contaminated area. Into the 2319 project. The area clear. Coming through. Watch yourself. Stand back. Careful. All clear. Situation is 990. Ready for decon.
Hey, thanks, guys. That was a close one.
Okay.
Okay, people, take a break. We gotta shut down for a half hour and reset the system.
An entire scare floor out of commission. What else can go wrong?
Assisting us over the coming weeks is a great outcome for New South Wales Police Force and the people of New South Wales. And yes, they will be helping with some sense of ensuring people are complying with the health orders. But that could be as simple as making a phone call to a household. It could be dropping care packages off to houses. It could be helping contact tracers. There are a myriad of roles and responsibilities that Defence said they will assist us and New South Wales Health. And what's this all about? It's about getting us out of lockdown as quick as possible.
We need you to comply with our directives so that we can fulfill our mission, so that we can open the prison for you again. They treat you like children and lock you down in your homes over a scare that is traceable to 1,000 people, traceable to less than 0.000 God knows what of the population of New South Wales, has allowed them to lock down the entire state and then start going about mandating their position across state employment. Let's be clear here, state employment. So it is the state that enforced this out, but has the military or ADF in its command centres while relying on its health ministers and some sort of federal directive to those health ministers. So we have a circle jerk of command back to the highest point of that command in the Australian Defence Force. This can then be linked directly to Prime Minister and Cabinet and the Federal Executive Council and some sort of hidden power behind them all.
Thank you. Brigadier Garraway.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Minister, for this opportunity to speak. It's a great pleasure for us to extend the support that we're already providing to the state of New South Wales in the current circumstances. The nature of the tasks that we're going to be performing are supporting the police under the direction of the New South Wales Police Force, and also supporting the Department of Health. You know, I want to say right up front that we're not a law enforcement agency, and that's not what we'll be doing. The tasks that we've got underway today, for example, are delivering food hampers, assisting people with the setup of vaccination stations, and those sorts of tasks will unfold in the coming days. I also expect that we'll be engaging once again with the Department of Health for contact tracing, which is a task we did last year for approximately 3 months. So as the Commissioner said, this is really just an expansion of the tasks that we've currently got underway. I expect that those tasks will develop in the coming weeks as stated. At the moment, we have approval for up to 300 people and for approximately 6 weeks. But you know, that's the upper figure, and hopefully that's as long as it will take. And as soon as the operation is concluded, as soon as we are no longer needed, we'll step back out of the background and let the state do what the state does best. But I just want to stress up front once again, we'll be under the control of the New South Wales Police. We're not a law enforcement agency, and we'll be doing tasks that are supportive in nature.
I just want to be clear here. We're not in command. We're only aiding and abetting. We have left the command in the policy's hands, although we'll take a back seat in their command centre. We will rely on the ministers that tell the porcupines from the federal line and then step in when requested by the state.
What you've got with the Defence Force is a disciplined, capable organisation that's vaccinated, that's tested, and it's compliant, and it's able to do a range of tasks that will take the pressure off the police, take the pressure off the Department of Health and other organisations so they can get out and do what they do best.
The ADF is compliant because it is jibby-jabbed, mandated, which were later deemed to be unlawful. So what kind of compliance or just following orders took place here?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Questions?
No questions.
Yeah, so at this stage, the vast majority have had their 2 vaccinations. I will have a small number of people by virtue of the timeline who may not have had their 2nd vaccination. And if that's the case, they'll be doing back-of-house tasks so that anyone in any front-facing task, for want of a better term, will be fully vaccinated. They'll be wearing full PPE. They'll be swab tested as a minimum every 3 days. They'll be temperature tested regularly. So as I said, you've got a healthy, compliant workforce. Yeah. Look, I can understand those concerns. Last night I had a 60-minute Zoom meeting with the New South Wales Imams Council, for example. So, we're reaching out to cultural groups just to make sure that they understand exactly what we're doing and, importantly, what we're not doing and what our role is. So thanks for your question, but I think we're covering that.
So this goes on through questions and answers for their actions on the ground where they believe they're actually doing the right thing, but the actions are just a bunch of people following orders and believing in their busyness that they are doing the right thing. Whereas the actual culpability steps up from here, up the chain into some sort of command responsibility that created this circle jerk so that no one could point the finger up that chain. Now, we've seen the Queensland Court define what we're talking about to be unlawful, and this would include the locking you down in your homes for extended periods of time. This is the back end coming around to kick them up the arse for failing to recognise the rules at which they were obligated to play by. And they should have known these things over time, but failed to recognise them while in the motion of going through their actions. So as we close off here, I'll return back to the screen again. We look at what this command is and how this all came about. So see how we have this circle of command that's been created so that they can all point to the next one like no one's responsible. But at the end of the day, someone created and he who creates is responsible. And Scott Morrison very openly spoke in that executive position where they created. So it is a matter of now understanding what that executive branch of the Constitution is and how it fits in with the blessing of Almighty God to be able to define something here very clearly that brings certain things on the table like those Hague Conventions. Now, post fact, they have this very large problem in that they already committed the crime. They already committed the actual offence, which post fact can be demonstrated to be an exercise at which corporately they've come along and issued a report on how to refine their logistics practices, right, for the next pandemic, for the next one. So they're putting the processes in play of a communist ideology going against certain international rules because they believe they have a right in your forgetting who you are, the right of self-determination in the matter, properly, anchored properly in those international laws, which we speak of very clearly, that can be defended on a courtroom record, therefore putting it standing before the international community and defining these things as being heinous international criminal offences at law, wherein we have demonstrated this circle of command, wherein they are all responsible parties for being in joint commission or complicity, complying with directives that may be deemed to be outside of the law, given that the two parties that were presented on the table might be the defining matter here as defined by Justice Lonergan, very clearly as being not an issue, or nothing could be found that was wrong in what was presented in the matters of the Crown and the line of authority established in that Constitution, in that very Constitution, which might have come under some sort of administration under the rules of usufruct as defined in the Hague Conventions, that puts all of these rules into the criminal code, therefore making them a criminal act on behalf of those agents that work for the state and federal, but the state. Australia as a nation state, New South Wales as a state wherein they hold office, under rules of engagement, rules of obligation, a duty, some might say, at the peril of one's life, some might say. Although here we see 25 years in jail, 17 years in jail for the very offences that we talk about. So you can see how going through the past and looking at the actions and correlating them to the rules, it's very clear that certain people in command responsibility under what is defined as a Yamashita Protocol hold that responsibility as a duty to not go outside of the rules of engagement that they were obligated to, and post facto we can see that they did. Would that not make them liable? Would that not make them triable in a courtroom for these offences? Would that not make the Australian Federal Police obligated at the same rules to get the broom out and let the witches clean up the witches while they keep gathering around a cauldron, trying to excuse themselves from these very actions?
The politicians within this nation, our beautiful country, what I'm worried about is where we're going. Now, when it comes to questions about my allegiance to this nation and to the people within it, be reminded, my brother was a cop, a Queensland cop, then a federal cop. My son's in the military. There's no question about where my allegiance lies. What I worry about is where we're going. Are any of you out there looking at where we've come from, where we are, and where we are going?
So we can see it's starting to impact the family society now, instead of just the ones that the state likes to push around into silence. It's starting to impact everyone. And when the Queen said, "You shall know them by their rainbows," she said, "We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when. But I know we'll meet again some sunny day."